This is the late 80s, early 90s. I was around 6 or 7 years old. I am at home with my sister, who was 14 or 15 at the time. We grew up in a small Texas town. Everyone knows everybody. We are home alone this particular night, and my folks let my sister babysit me frequently. We always got along due to our age gap. Anyway, it is about 8 p.m. in the winter. Deserts get pretty damn cold. So it is dark, and we are in the common room, since that is where the TV was, watching 60 Minutes or 48 Hours or hard copy or something. This one was a typical story. Guy next door went on a rampage in his next door neighbor's house, mutilating them and kidnapping their young daughter. The thing about our house common room is the door leading to the backyard was a large glass door on a wall of floor-to-ceiling windows. Nothing but blackness beyond it, unless you have the back light on, which we did not. The front door is on the other side of the room, with a small entryway. This is a solid door, so you cannot see what is beyond it, with a glass storm door on the outside of it. About 45 minutes into the show, they're talking about the ongoing manhunt for this crazy guy, and then there was a loud front door bangs like crazy. We jump up and scream like banshees. There's dead silence now. The only lights on in the house are the kitchen, down the hall from the common room we were in, and the light from the TV. We start thinking it's something on the porch. We had some planters and a rocking chair out there. Perhaps it had simply blown against the door. This was West Texas. Crazy strong winds out that way. A minute or two of silence, and us holding each other passes. Just when we are about to declare everything is safe, we hear the storm door on the outside of our front door close. Someone had to have opened that door to be able to bang on the front door like that. We are both frozen in the middle of the room on the floor where we had been watching TV. My sister crawls over to the TV and turns it off. It was an old TV, so you had to turn that metal dial to switch it off, which it does with a mildly loud thunk. Now it is just us, in a room dimly lit by the kitchen light down the hall. I do not remember how much time passed, me and my sister still crouched by the TV. But we kept making eye contact, then looking at the front door. I remember this part vividly. I'm on my knees sitting on my feet, and I turn around to look at the back wall of windows and glass door. We hear, and I see the back door knob turn. It was locked on the knob, but not deadbolted. It rattles slightly as if someone is gently trying the handle. Neither of us make a sound, just held our breath. Then, loud as hell, someone is trying to force the door open, just jerking it back and forth. The whole wall of windows is vibrating violently, and I can see with each jerk of the door how my slight reflection gets fuzzy, then clear, then fuzzy. My sister flips out and screams bloody murder. I am still frozen on the floor. She gets up and basically drags me into her bedroom, slams the door, throws her mattress and anything she can in front of her door. Thankfully, she had remembered the phone. We still had to direct dial the sheriff there, and in her panic didn't remember the number. She just hit redial on the phone. It was one of her friends, and she tells them in broken gasps that someone is trying to get into our house and needs to get there right now. I am curled up on the floor and cannot stop shaking. We don't hear anything else until we see the headlights of my sister's friend and her parents driving up to the house. We never did find out who was at the door or why. There were no signs of anything happening, but a couple of scuff marks on the bottom of the back door that we could not remember if they were there beforehand or not. Nothing like that has happened to me or her since, but for damn sure, we never forget to lock a door after that.
About 4 years ago, I was ending my freshman year at college. I had lived in the dorms with a kick-ass roommate and pretty much had a great experience altogether. Towards the end of my last semester, something seemed different in my hall of the dorms. We were all still our lively selves, but just walking into the dorms would give you this massive feeling of dread. We all wrote it off as the stress of finals approaching, but it just felt off. Well, one night after studying, I decide to hit the shower so I can just wake up and make my way to class in a few hours. The entrance to the halls were massive steel doors with a small window located at one end, and across from it was the bathroom. It seriously felt like a prison block rather than a living quarter for college students. As for the bathroom itself, when you walked in, you were immediately met with 2 sets of sinks, 2 sinks aside, on your left and right, with massive mirrors facing each other that created an infinite loop of mirrors. Then past that, you had your 2 urinals and a toilet stall on your left, and 2 showers on your right. When facing the left set of sinks, you can clearly see into the showers from the mirror, if the door is open. And in the right set of sinks, you can see the reflection of the shower. The door of the bathroom was identical to the entrance to the hall, a massive steel frame with a small window that didn't allow for much of a view. The door was propped open with a giant wooden wedge that couldn't be moved unless you were really trying to close that door. So I'm all alone in the bathroom, gearing up to go shower. I throw my change of clothes on the right side sink, so that way I can reach around the stall and grab them. Once I set my stuff down, I happen to look up into the mirror and I can see in the distance something almost shimmering inside the shower stall. As I look at it, I notice that it slowly gets closer, like it's jumping from the furthermost layer to the next layer closer. I'm kind of unsettled, but I don't think much of it, other than me coming down off of a massive Red Bull, Adderall, and caffeine kick. But it starts transitioning faster. As it gets closer, I can start making out details, but nothing vivid or striking. It's just a dark mass that looks like it's covered in hair. At this point, I'm freaking out hardcore since this thing is getting closer in the mirror, and I'm pretty much frozen to this one spot. As it gets to the fourth layer, I get the closest look at this thing I'll ever get, and I regret every minute of it. It wasn't hair, but some kind of long flowing veil. You could see through it partially, but from the torso down it was just solid black, and the face, I can't describe it. It was clearly human, but at the same time it was so far removed. There were eyes. They were black, but definitely glowing somehow. I only saw this for maybe a second at the most, but it's burned into my mind forever. Then the lights cut out and I hear the door slam. It's pitch black in the bathroom, so I can't see this thing anymore. I go to open the door, but it won't budge, and then this intense smell of blood hits me out of nowhere. And that's all I remember. I woke up later in the hospital. From what my RA claims, he was on his way to go use the bathroom sometime after this happened, where he found me in the shower stall with my shirt covered in blood from a massive nosebleed. He tried asking me what happened, and according to him, all I could respond with was, "It saw me," and I start freaking out. So he calls an ambulance and they get me to the hospital. All the while I'm apparently freaking out, so they sedate me to get me to calm down. I'm coming to around the time my parents show up, worried sick of course. I ask them what happened, and according to the doctors, they believe I had a seizure. However, they ran CAT scans soon after I was cooperative enough to do so and found no sign of any seizure occurring. Not to mention epilepsy doesn't run in my family at all, and having taken Adderall countless times in the past. And since then, I've never had a similar side effect, neither hallucinations or potential seizures. To this day, I still can't bring myself to look into a mirror for more than a minute. And just being stuck in a room with one for an extended period will just cause me to break down. I've been to therapy going on 3 years because of this, and I've talked to countless religious leaders who, besides giving me the general, "well, you should turn to God in times like these" talks, don't recognize that kind of pattern as anything demonic or evil. And the strangest thing is that before that incident, there were no actual claims of activity in those dorms, and since I left there hasn't been any either. It was just that one isolated incident.
In high school, I had a good friend named Steve. One day, freshman year, 2007-ish, he told my group of friends about an odd turn of events that happened to his brother, Tim, a couple years prior. Tim went to college somewhere in New Hampshire. One night around 2 a.m., Tim and his good friend decided they needed Dunkin' Donuts, even though the nearest Dunkin' Donuts was across state lines. I don't know much about New Hampshire's geography, but I'm told this trek involved going through a narrow highway that takes them through some woods. On the way back from Dunkin' Donuts, a mysterious car pulled in front of them on the highway. It was a red compact car with the markings scratched off, and its only defining feature was its license plate that had a black O and a green M, who will henceforth be known just as OM. Around this time, Tim describes weird coincidences happening, like his phone losing service and the jazz station playing "Smells Like Teen Spirit." But I'll admit it, those could have just been weird coincidences. At this time, Tim and his friend were sensing some bad juju from this guy, so Tim let his foot off the gas and was happy to just let OM go off on his way. But OM wasn't done with them. As soon as Tim slowed down, OM did the same. Tim thought this was weird, but maybe if he floors it, he could get around OM. But when Tim sped up, so did OM. Tim and Co. were freaking out at this point and had no idea what they were dealing with, but they saw a curve in the road up ahead. They saw OM go around it, and they decided to just stop. Their adrenaline was pumping, and they weren't sure how long they sat there. But after what felt like 20 minutes, they worked up the courage to continue on their way. Maybe OM would have mercy on them. But as soon as they got around the corner, OM was there, the exact same distance as they last saw him, matching their speed. OM clearly was without mercy. Tim and his friend were rightfully scared for their lives and relented to just going forward and hoping they could get out of this alive. Eventually there was a fork in the highway. One led towards the college town, while the other led further into the woods. Our heroes went home, while OM ventured into the unknown. Tim never saw OM again. So I was told this story my freshman year and was convinced it didn't happen. And even my buddy Steve wasn't exactly sure of its veracity. But around 2008 to 2009, I was listening to the local talk radio station while doing homework and heard a news bulletin. There was a murder in a neighboring county the previous night, and the sole witness saw a car leaving the scene of the crime. She described it as a red compact car with a license plate that had a black O and a green M. I felt so scared. I'm in suburban Orange County, California. What the hell is OM doing all the way over here? Maybe I was just hearing things. I ran into Steve the next day at school, and he heard the same report. We learned two things. One, neither of us were crazy, and two, that OM was absolutely real. This previous May, my friend Blake was on his way home from dropping off his girlfriend. For some reason, he decided to take a highway that leads through a canyon home. While driving along, a car pulls in front of him. It's a red compact car with a license plate that has a black O and green M. Blake was familiar with the stories and became rightfully scared and fell as far behind OM as OM led him. When they reached near the end of the canyon, OM did a U-turn and went back while Blake continued home to change his pants and sleep. That is all I know about OM. I'm thoroughly convinced he's a cross-country serial killer who crosses state lines to confuse the police, but I admit it's only conjecture.
When I was about 8 or 9, we lived in a house that my father built for us in the middle of nowhere, Indiana. My parents owned a small business that often brought clients to our remote little homestead, and over the years, we met some rather odd people. One such person was a strange man that gave me the Heebie Jeebies as soon as I saw him. He arrived at our home in a black car with tinted windows, wearing all black, with a black hat and dark sunglasses. His demeanor was very strange, and he was very interested in our black Persian cat named Mercedes. Nevertheless, he left after his consultation with my parents, but later at dinner, everyone admitted that he set them on edge. That night, Mercedes came down very ill. A few days later, after an illness the local vet couldn't diagnose, that included the cat vomiting up gobs of what appeared to be black tar, Mercedes died. In her final moments, she would swat and hiss at something in the air. I'll never forget the chill I got when she took her last breath. After this, many strange things began happening around our home. We'd find footprints in the snow that started and stopped out of nowhere. Noises in the middle of the night. The wallpaper would be torn halfway off the walls. My mother, who has always been somewhat of a sensitive person, claimed to start seeing demonic creatures around the house and became rather withdrawn. I had asthma, but had been a long while without an attack. Soon after all of this began happening, I started having episodes again. I was very sick one night, so I slept on the floor next to my mother's side of the bed in my parents' bedroom. Under their bed and around there were a bunch of boxes, family photos, wrapping paper, etc. Things that we'd been meaning to store elsewhere. In the middle of the night, I had a particularly bad asthma attack. I heard my mother wake up screaming, "Get away from her," and trying to get to me. Every box from under the bed and around the room had been stacked between where I lay on the floor and my mother's side of the bed, preventing her from getting to me. She finally reached me and gave me my inhaler, and she cried all night. She never told me what she saw that night. But strange things continued to happen for several more months. We had the house blessed and tried everything we could. Eventually, the activity started to slow. My brother and his family live in the house now, and they hear unexplainable sounds every so often, but nothing like what happened that winter. I grew up to be quite a skeptic, but I still can't explain what happened that year. I just tell myself it was all in our heads.
My girl and I were flying into her hometown after being out pursuing around the country for Thanksgiving. It was a few days earlier than scheduled, so we didn't tell any of her family, or mine, who also flew in, because we had been spending Thanksgiving together for the last few years. We honestly didn't utter a word. This was back in 1992, so there were no cell phones and no tracking abilities or any of that BS. Anyway, we got into town late at night, 11 p.m., 12 a.m. We had decided that we were going to stay in a hotel since the plan was to surprise the family, and while showing up on their doorstep late at night would have certainly surprised them, that wasn't really the kind we were going for. We get into our room. It's got a kitchenette, a couch, a TV, a king bed, it all around probably one of the nicer places we've stayed in. I pass out immediately. She takes a shower. From what she's told me, she lays in bed, unable to sleep until about 2 a.m. For context, we were in an extended stay hotel with a door that led right out into the parking lot. There was a sliding glass door to the left of the bed. Straight ahead was the couch, the door, a desk, and a smaller window. Blinds were shut on the sliding glass door, but on the smaller window, I guess they were open a crack. But when she realized she was so tired, she didn't care all that much. Our room was completely dark, so it wasn't really like anybody could see in any way kind of mentality. As she turns over to go to sleep at 2 a.m., through the slightly open blinds at the smaller window, she sees a flash, like a camera flash. But because the parking lot is 50 steps away, she just simply assumes that it's a streetlight and doesn't think anything of it and falls asleep. 5 a.m. rolls around and I'm woken up to loud knocking on the sliding glass door. She wakes up only a few seconds after I do, and is just as confused and disoriented as I am. Continuous, persistent knocking. I had half a mind to just assume that it was some drunkard, it was the holidays after all, who had come back from a night out and made a wrong turn somewhere while trying to get back to his room, but was sure he was where he was supposed to be. Knocking stops briefly, then starts on the front door. I want to further emphasize how this knocking was. Not quite a police knock, but someone was sure that they wanted into this room and wasn't going to stop until they got in. I go over to the door to look through the peephole, and I don't see anybody. The knocking starts again on the sliding glass door. If it was someone trying to wake up whoever they were with because they got locked out of their room, wouldn't they be announcing themselves? Wouldn't they be calling out the name of the person that they were trying so desperately to wake up? Like I said, the knock wasn't quite police-like, so I know that it wasn't them. They would have made sure everyone knew they were there had it been. I go back to the sliding glass door and stand there. The knocking persists. Once it stops, I peel the curtain back just enough that I can see out of the window. I'm pretty blind without contacts and didn't have my glasses on, so I am practically pressing my face up to the glass to see who I can see. And I see nobody. The second that I shut the blinds, the knocking starts again. At this point, I'm freaked out. I was trying to keep my composure as to not make my girl unsettled, but we're both already past that point. Nobody knows that we're here. Nobody that would want to pull a prank on us, none of our family, our friends, nobody. The only person that knows we're here was the older man who checked us in, and why the hell would he care where we are? I'm borderline a little worried for our safety. If whoever was out there managed to get in and had cruel intentions upon entering, I'm a small guy. I'm 5'8". I can talk a lot of crap and can throw a punch, but if somebody bigger than I really wants to kick my ass, they'll be able to do it no problem. I call up to the front desk as the knocking doesn't stop, and on the second ring, the man who checked us in answers and seems concerned as to why I'm calling at this hour. I explain the situation. The knocking is still happening as I'm on the phone. And he tells me that he's going to send the security guard over to check it out. The knocking continues on for about another minute. Not even probably 2 or 3 minutes after the knocking stops, I get a call back from the front desk who says that security didn't see anybody, didn't see any signs of anybody, but that he apologizes for whatever happened. Super comforting. Neither one of us fell back asleep until it was light out, and when we went out later in the day, there was a singular footprint leading away from the sliding glass door. Weird because we were in a nice part of town. It was a place she grew up in and therefore felt safe in. Knowing the area as well as she did, that's one of the reasons we chose to stay at this place. It was horrible. We are both still stumped as to what the situation was. I don't know. I still get uncomfortable just thinking about it, really.